More than 300 news outlets publishing editorials today blasting President Trump's claim that the media is the enemy of the people. The New York Times writing, quote, in 2018, some of the most damaging attacks are coming from government officials, and calling journalists the enemy of the people is dangerous, period. Joining me now, Bill McKern, member of the Wall Street Journal editorial board, Juan Williams, co-host The Five and a Fox News political analyst. Good evening to both of you.
Hi, Sandra.
Bill, what did you make of this coordinated effort to attack the president?
Yeah, well, our paper didn't participate in it. I mean, I think we're pretty strong supporters of the First Amendment at the Wall Street Journal. I make my living off of it. I'm not sure this really advances the game. I don't believe the press is the enemy, or I'd have to believe I was the enemy of the people. I don't believe that. But I think it would have a much more credible case if a lot of these papers, I'd like to know where they were on Citizens United, about the attempt to suppress the tape on Mrs. Clinton, on union workers who don't like their money spent for political messages they don't like on pro-life clinics, that people try to compel them to offer, pro-choice advice. So I think a lot of them, I'd like to know where they were on those issues.
Well, it would be hard to keep track because
Right.
It was estimated by the Boston Globe, Juan, that some 350 newspapers would participate. Does this make them look any better?
Well, remember, I mean, the power of this is that the president has the bully pulpit. He's the president of the United States. And right now, Sandra, it's something like 51% of Republicans agree with the president that the press is out there trying to get him and is an enemy. And to me, that's deeply troubling. I don't care if you're Republican or Democrat. To me, what Bill just spoke of, the constitutional provision for protections of a free and vigorous and partisan press, is absolute in a democracy in order to produce informed citizens.
So incredibly important. And as Bill, you just mentioned, the Wall Street Journal did not participate, and neither did the Los Angeles Times. They wrote this, quote, the Los Angeles Times has decided not to participate. There will be no free press editorial on our page today. It writes, this is not because we don't believe that President Trump has been engaged in a cynical, demagogic, and unfair assault on our industry. He has, it writes. We would not want to leave the impression that we take our lead from others or that we engage in groupthink. Bill, very
Yeah, no, I think the Times made an excellent point on that. I mean, I think it's a big yawn. In a couple of days, it will be gone as an issue. Again, I don't agree with them. I think President Trump would have been on firmer ground if he said the press may be the enemy of Donald Trump and the presidency in this, but not the American people. And like with Juan and I, we have different. I mean, I would say I'm sort of like to the public that doesn't like the press. I'm the good witch, like, the Wizard of Oz,
Yeah.
and there are other ones, and people don't always believe that. But I don't know. I think it's kind of a stunt. And what I'm more interested in is the vigorous defense of the First Amendment rights for everyone, which we don't really see.
As for the president and his thoughts and his words on this, he tweeted this, Juan, there is nothing that I would want more for our country than true freedom of the press. The fact is that the press is free to write and say anything it wants, but much of what it says is fake news, pushing a political agenda, or just plain trying to hurt people. Honesty wins.
Well, I think there's honesty coming from this president. I mean, one of the challenges that President Trump presents for the press is he'll say things that just aren't true. And then when the press calls him on it, he'll say, oh, let's move on. That's not what I was talking about, whatever. That's very difficult. But the key point here is what you're hearing today is from the editorial pages of newspapers, not the news side of newspapers. These are two separate entities.
Still a conscious decision on the part of the newspapers to do this. So do you think it was a stunt like Bill said, or do you think it's going to have any sway?
I don't think it has much in the way of persuasion. I think Bill's right. In a couple of days, no one will even remember this. But remember, you have papers that endorse President
Trump. And Bill McKern talking about it on the story on Fox News.
But I'm saying you have papers that endorse President Trump who today came out and said this because, you know what, journalism is important and we should not diminish it, and we should not let any president, Donald Trump, Obama, anybody else, deny reporters access, threaten to change the libel laws. Not good.
Yeah, I just say, again, I think this would be a lot more credible. President Trump singled out the Supreme Court justices in that State of the Union on the Citizens United case, probably the most important Supreme Court decision on the First Amendment in many, many years. I think a lot of these papers would have had much more credibility if they had weighed in on that, because we had under the Obama administration the IRS targeting people whose speech they didn't like.
Obviously what's coming up in this conversation, and Juan, I may have caught a few words of this exchanged on the Five earlier today, and that was the treatment by the press of the previous president, Barack Obama.
Right.
Wouldn't you agree that it was much different?
No, this is so interesting to me because, as I said, the #1 paper in the country is Bill's paper, the Wall Street Journal. I think they had lots of criticisms of Barack Obama, including on the use of money as evidence of free speech.
There weren't 300 editorials coordinated.
But I'm saying there's lots of, well, #1 paper is your paper. #1 radio shows Rush Limbaugh. #1 in so many ways in terms of cable news is Fox News, right?
But that's 3 outlets.
Okay, but I'm saying that's #1. So it's not like you would say, oh, nobody was critical of Obama. But I hear this response as if, oh, because some papers were not critical of Obama in the opinion of right-wing people, oh, well, therefore it's
Or what about criticism of Hillary Clinton? How about the endorsements? When you look back at the 2016 election, 57 for Clinton, total circulation over 13 million. For Trump, 2, total circulation 300,000.
Don't forget the New York Times is the one that broke the story about Hillary Clinton's email server.
Yeah. Look, I think in general, the press is better off when we actually assert our First Amendment rights and report and don't back down than when we preen about them. I think we're very unsympathetic when they do that.
You've made your point very clear on all of this, as did the Wall Street Journal. Thank you to both of you gentlemen.
Thank you
tonight. Good to see you.